50 million Americans went hungry last year. That's 1 out of every 6 citizens in our country, the wealthiest nation on earth. Scarcity certainly isn't the issue, as domestically, we produce enough calories to feed every American twice the daily amount. We need to reform and properly fund the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. In 1968, 10 million Americans went hungry, and in response to this growing epidemic, Congress created the Modern Food Safety Net and the Food Stamps Program. By the end of the 70s, the issue of hunger in the United States was a nearly non-existent one. So what happened? In the 80s, President Reagan came along, and he cut funding to food stamps programs and began to speak of moochers and takers and people living like kings on the taxpayer dime, and this shifted the responsibility of dealing with our nation's hunger from the federal government to churches and food banks. And look at the mess we have on our hands today. 50 million citizens. The system is clearly a broken one, and all because the federal government stopped talking about how they can help, and instead about who is to blame. The United States ranks dead last in food insecurity out of all advanced nations on earth. It is estimated that at some point in their young lives, 1 out of every 2 American children will experience food insecurity in some form. They won't know where their next meal is coming from, or if there even will be a next meal. Some people might think that hunger in the United States is only a problem for the homeless or for people in the inner city, but this is simply not true. Hunger devastates all parts of our country. Hunger affects rural communities, urban communities, and suburban communities. Hunger is not uniquely a white problem, nor a black problem, nor an Asian problem, nor a Latino problem. Hunger is an American problem that we must fix together as Americans. There are 3 main issues with SNAP programs today. First, it's extremely difficult to qualify to receive benefits. A family of 3 must be making $24,000 or less per year in order to receive federal assistance. The idea that a single working mother earning $25,000 a year can put enough food on the table for her 2 kids and make ends meet is preposterous. We need to raise eligibility thresholds so that Americans who currently are in dire need of relief, some in near starvation conditions, but currently don't qualify, do. The second issue is that it's very difficult to receive these benefits. 1 out of every 4 Americans who are eligible to receive some sort of federal assistance fail to, because they either live too far away or there's too much paperwork. The fact that these are the reasons that the hungry in America aren't receiving help is ridiculous. We need to ensure, unequivocally so, that all hungry Americans receive the relief that they both need and deserve. However, the most appalling aspect of our current food safety net is that even for the select few who do qualify and who do receive benefits, the relief is so minute that it barely even makes a difference. A family of 3 is allocated $3 per day in federal food stamps. Think about that. That's $1 per day per person. We need to increase funding to SNAP programs so that people can actually receive meaningful relief, not $1 a day, but $5 or $6, so that they can actually put food on the table, can actually feed themselves and their families, and we can actually make a dent in our country's hunger crisis. Critics might say that we don't have the money to do this, that we can't afford to increase funding and increase benefits, but we can't afford not to. Experts have determined that last year, hunger cost our nation $167 billion in lost economic productivity because hungry workers can't work and hungry students can't learn. The simple steps that I have laid out today would cost the federal government only $35 billion in increased funding over the next 2 years. So it's a $35 billion fix to an $167 billion problem. Economically, eliminating hunger in our country is a no-brainer. But ultimately, this issue is not an economic one, but a moral one. It is downright offensive that we allow 17 million American children, 1 out of every 6 citizens, to go hungry each year. As President Nixon once said, something like the very honor of American democracy is involved. In the 60s and 70s, he recognized what was at stake, and he took steps to fix the issue, and now we must do the same today. Because we know it will work, we know it will make an impact, because history has proven that it will. We are the greatest country in the world. Look at all we've accomplished together as a nation when we set our collective hearts and minds on a goal. We've abolished slavery, stood up for women's rights, and conquered the Great Depression. We defeated countless tyrants and fascists and communists overseas, and we've overcome racism on the buses of Montgomery and the lunch counters of Selma. Now we as Americans must summon that same resolve to deal with the issue of hunger in our country. Solving this problem cannot be a question of whether we can, but when we will. President Obama has frequently challenged our nation to step up to the plate and answer our call, reminding us that this is our moment and this is our time. And he's right. We must rise up together, now, as Americans, to meet the challenge of hunger and ensure that no Americans are allowed to go hungry in our country, the greatest and most prosperous nation on earth. This is our time. Thank you.